Marcus Reed got the phone call at 6:12 a.m., just as the sun was beginning to push light through the blinds of his downtown apartment. He almost ignored it, because unknown numbers at that hour usually meant wrong numbers or automated reminders, but something made him answer. The woman on the other end spoke calmly, professionally, identifying herself as a representative from a private legal firm. She asked if he was the son of Eleanor Reed. Marcus confirmed, confused, because his mother had died 3 years ago after a brief illness that left more silence than closure. The woman paused before informing him that a sealed trust under his mother's name had just been activated and that he was required to attend a formal reading in person. Marcus leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to process what she was saying. His mother had been a public school librarian. Practical, organized, not someone who casually maintained secret trusts. After her death, he handled the estate himself. A modest house, minimal savings, no surprises. He asked the woman what the trust contained. She replied that the terms required physical presence and identification, and that all documentation would be disclosed at the meeting. The call ended with a scheduled appointment set for Friday afternoon. Marcus stood in the quiet apartment staring at his reflection in the dark microwave glass. He had spent years believing he understood the full scope of his mother's life. She had raised him alone after his father left when Marcus was 5. She never spoke badly about the man, simply described him as someone who wasn't built for staying. Marcus grew up with that explanation, clean and simple, no drama, no mystery, just absence. Now a sealed trust suggested complexity. He told himself it was likely something administrative, perhaps an old insurance policy he overlooked. Still, the phrase sealed trust unsettled him. His mother had valued transparency. She left sticky notes labeling pantry shelves. She kept warranty manuals filed by appliance. She did not hide things. The law office was located across town in a renovated historic building that smelled faintly of polished wood and paper. When Marcus arrived that Friday, a receptionist guided him into a conference room where a middle-aged attorney and a younger assistant waited. A thick envelope rested on the table between them. After verifying his identification, the attorney began reading from a prepared statement. The trust had been established 24 years earlier, 1 year after Marcus's birth. It contained a safety deposit key, a notarized letter, and instructions that the contents were to be delivered only when Marcus turned 35. He was 35 last month. Marcus felt a slow tightening in his chest. His mother had planned something decades in advance. The attorney slid the small brass key across the table. "The box is held at First National," he explained. "Your mother prepaid the storage for 30 years. Marcus picked up the key, its weight heavier than expected. "What's in it?" he asked. The attorney shook his head slightly. "We were instructed not to open it." Marcus left the office with the envelope under his arm and a growing sense that the story he inherited about his family might have been edited. If his father simply left, why create a trust tied to his age? Why wait until 35? That night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, turning the key over in his palm, replaying small details from childhood that once felt insignificant. His mother never displayed photographs from before he was born. There were no wedding albums, no framed pictures of her and his father together. When he once asked what his father did for work, she hesitated before saying, "He made choices." At the time, Marcus assumed she meant bad financial decisions or immaturity. Now it sounded less casual. By Monday morning, He stood inside the bank's private vault room. The metallic air, cool and sterile. The attendant retrieved a small safety deposit box and placed it in front of him before stepping away for privacy. Marcus inserted the key, feeling an unexpected flicker of hesitation. If the contents confirmed the simple narrative he'd believed for 30 years, nothing would change. But if they didn't, then his entire understanding of why his father left might shift. He turned the key. The lock clicked open. Inside the box were 3 items: a sealed envelope addressed in his mother's handwriting, a photograph turned face down, and a newspaper clipping dated 36 years ago. Marcus reached first for the clipping, unfolding it carefully. The headline froze his breath in place. Local man arrested in financial fraud investigation. Beneath the headline was a black and white photo of a younger man being escorted by authorities. Even grainy and decades old, Marcus recognized the face instantly. It was the face he saw in the mirror every morning. Marcus stared at the newspaper clipping for a long moment, convinced he was misreading it. The resemblance was not subtle. The man in the grainy black and white photo had the same sharp jawline, the same narrow eyes, the same slight downward tilt at the corner of his mouth. The caption beneath the image identified him as Adrian Cole, 32, a financial consultant accused of orchestrating a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme involving falsified investment portfolios. Marcus read the paragraph twice, then a third time. Arrested following a 2-year investigation. Multiple clients affected. Trial pending. The date on the clipping was 36 years old, which meant the article was printed before Marcus was born. His pulse began to pound in his ears. He reached for the photograph inside the deposit box and turned it over. It showed his mother standing beside the same man from the article, both younger, both smiling at the camera. Her hand rested lightly on his chest. On the back, in her handwriting, were 3 words: "Before everything changed." Marcus swallowed hard. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. If Adrian Cole was his father, then the story about a man who wasn't built for staying had been a deliberate understatement. He unfolded the sealed envelope next, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was a letter written in his mother's familiar script, dated the week of his 35th birthday. She began without apology. "If you are reading this, it means I kept my promise to wait until you were old enough to decide what kind of truth you want to carry." Marcus felt his chest tighten. The letter explained that Adrian Cole was indeed his father, but he had not simply left. He had been convicted of financial fraud months after Marcus was born and sentenced to federal prison. During the trial, evidence surfaced suggesting that some of the missing funds were never recovered. His mother wrote that the case had layers the public never saw. Adrian maintained he was protecting someone higher in the firm. He refused to name names. He served 9 years before being released on parole. Marcus's eyes moved quickly over the page. His mother explained that after Adrian's release, he tried to contact her. She refused, not because she hated him, but because she feared the unresolved parts of the case. Shortly after his parole, Adrian disappeared. Officially, he violated the terms and became a fugitive. Unofficially, there were rumors he intended to expose others involved in the scheme. She wrote that before he vanished, he sent her a final message insisting he had been set up as the fall guy, and that the real architects of the fraud were never charged. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he reached the final paragraph. "I did not tell you because I wanted you to grow without inheriting his shadow, but if he was telling the truth, then you deserve the choice to look for it." Beneath the letter was one final line: separate from the rest. The account number is not closed. Marcus's breathing slowed into something deliberate. He reread that sentence carefully. An account number, not closed. He looked back into the deposit box and noticed a small folded slip of paper tucked beneath the padding. He lifted it. Written in tight, precise digits was a bank account number and the name of a financial institution he recognized immediately. It was not local. It was international. Marcus felt the ground beneath his assumptions shift. If funds were never recovered, and if an account remained open decades later, then either his father was more guilty than he claimed, or someone had preserved evidence in silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket, startling him in the quiet vault room. He hesitated before pulling it out. The notification was from an unknown email address. The subject line read, "He tried to tell the truth." Marcus's pulse quickened. The preview text contained only one sentence. The money was never his. Marcus stared at the email notification for several seconds before opening it, half expecting it to disappear like a hallucination brought on by shock. The message was short and direct. Adrian Cole didn't steal the money. He moved it. There's a difference. Attached was a single encrypted file and a line beneath it, "If you want answers, check the account before they close it for good." Marcus felt the vault room tilt slightly, not physically, but internally, as if the foundation of his identity had shifted a few inches off center. He looked back down at the slip of paper in his hand with the international account number. His mother had preserved this deliberately. She had waited until he was 35. That meant she expected something to surface eventually. Or someone. He left the bank in a daze, but with purpose forming rapidly beneath the confusion. By the time he reached his apartment, he had already decided he would not ignore the email. If this was a scam, it was the most intricately timed one imaginable. If it wasn't, then someone had been watching the activation of the trust. Someone who knew the timeline. He powered up his laptop and examined the sender's address. It was routed through layers of encryption, but the domain referenced a financial security firm that had been dissolved nearly 20 years ago. The same firm mentioned in the original fraud article, his father's employer. Marcus opened the attachment using a protected viewer. Inside was a scanned ledger sheet dated months before Adrian's arrest. It showed large transfers moving into the international account listed in the deposit box. But what caught Marcus's attention was the final column labeled Authorization. The signature approving the transfers did not match the signature shown in court documents attached to the newspaper archives. The curves were different, the slant inconsistent. It looked forged. Marcus leaned back slowly, heart pounding in controlled, rhythmic beats. If Adrian moved the funds under instruction and someone forged documentation tying him directly to the embezzlement, then his conviction might have been strategically convenient. A fall guy with access, but without power. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "They're reviewing dormant accounts this quarter. If you're going to look, do it now." Marcus typed carefully. "Who is this?" The response came after a pause. "Someone who owed your father." The simplicity of the answer unsettled him more than any threat could have. He opened a secure browser session and navigated to the International Bank's portal, entering the account number exactly as written. He expected an error message. Instead, the login page requested a secondary authentication code. His mother's letter resurfaced in his mind. "I kept my promise to wait until you were old enough to decide what kind of truth you want to carry." He checked the envelope again, running his fingers along the seams, and felt a slight ridge inside the paper lining. Carefully, he peeled back the inner layer and found a small card taped discreetly within it. On the card was a 6-digit number and a date that matched his birthday. Marcus exhaled slowly. She had anticipated this moment in detail. He entered the authentication code. The screen refreshed. Account balance $4,732,118.43. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. The funds had not moved in over 2 decades. No withdrawals, no transfers, frozen in time. If his father had stolen the money for himself, he would have used it. Instead, it sat untouched, accruing minimal interest, almost like evidence preserved rather than profit enjoyed. Another notification appeared on the banking portal, flagged for review due to inactivity. Marcus understood the urgency now. If the bank initiated a compliance review, the account could be seized or permanently closed before any forensic trail was established. His phone buzzed again. "You see it now, don't you?" Marcus stared at the screen, mind racing through implications. If the money remained intact, then his father's claim that he was protecting someone became more plausible. The funds were likely meant to be rerouted temporarily, perhaps as part of a larger internal manipulation. Instead, he was arrested before completing whatever plan existed. Marcus typed slowly. "Why tell me?" The reply came almost immediately. "Because they think he took the secret to prison. He didn't." Marcus looked back at the balance on the screen, then at the forged signature in the scanned ledger file. If the signature could be proven fraudulent, it might reopen questions about the original conviction. But reopening it would also expose powerful individuals who benefited from the narrative that Adrian Cole acted alone. His phone vibrated once more. They'll notice the login. Decide quickly. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. For 35 years, he believed his father abandoned him. For 35 years, he believed the story was simple. Now simplicity felt manufactured. He reopened his eyes and navigated to the account's document archive. A final file sat there, time-stamped the week of his father's disappearance. The file name was only 3 words: "For my son." Marcus hovered over it, aware that whatever was inside could redefine not just his father's legacy, but his own. He clicked download.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.